Hi, welcome back to another episode of Look Ma No Hands. My name is Linda, and this is a program where I talk about all things crochet, sometimes painting, things that I'm reading, what I'm watching on TV, at the movies, on streaming, and occasionally I do a segment that I call Fancy Footwork, where I show ways that I've adapted daily activities to be able to do them with my feet. And sometimes I'll throw in a segment about things that are happening outside of the podcast in my daily life. So I'll get started with what I'm wearing, and this week I am wearing something that I crocheted. It's the honor roll vest, which is, I believe, the very first crochet thing that I wore in my first official episode of Look Ma No Hands. The one that I wore that day was a red one, and I like it enough that I've made probably a half a dozen of them. So I've given one away to a friend of mine, and then her son, who is my little sweetie, liked one of the ones that I had made that was kind of a multicolored yarn, so he kind of begged me to have that one. So of course, my favorite little buddy, I couldn't say no, so I gave him that one. I made a purple one last week. I'm trying to think, is that all of them? I think that might be all of them. And I think I'm gonna make another purple one because this is one of the things that I was stitching this week. I finished it and I made the third size, which is for a 39-inch bust. The one I made last week was for 36-inch bust. And when I tried it on, it was just a hair snug. So I figured, if you recall, I said last week when I was talking about that particular project, I said I noticed that I made a mistake in the first several iterations that I made of it, and I now finally have corrected that mistake, which changes the fit substantially. But knowing that I made the mistake in the first ones that I made and it changes the fit, I made the size down from my first attempt at it, thinking that that was the problem, but it wasn't. It was just that I was not doing it correctly. So now that I can do it correctly and I made the size down and it was too snug, I said, okay, let's go back to the original size that you tried to make for yourself. And I did that, and it fits really nice. So I'm gonna make the third size again in purple because I still have purple yarn left. I really liked that purple. So maybe next week or the week after I'll have another purple one finished. I have two potential homes for the purple one that didn't fit me, so I'll talk to some people and see who wants it. So yeah, it won't go to waste. I have some people in mind that might like it. So, and then the other thing that I finished this week, crochet wise, is called the Trinity tote by Salena Baca. It's from one of the books that she's done where there are several different bags. Maybe it's not her book, but it's like a collection that she's included in. So I've made this particular pattern before. I really like it. The one thing that I'm having a hard time deciding on this time though is for the finish, the ties for the bag call for tassels, and I have pom-pom makers, so I was kind of thinking about maybe doing pom-poms instead of tassels. So if you have an opinion on that, go ahead and tell me if you think tassels or pom-poms. But here's the tote. It's three squares that are stitched together to make the little market tote. The pattern is alternating rows of double crochet, and then the other row is double crochet chain one, and you skip one of the double crochets from the previous row to make the little kind of like windows in between each row. And the instructions for the pattern call for a single color, but again, trying to use up the yarn that I have. So what I did was take 3 colors of yarn of the same fiber content and use their acrylic cotton blend. So I used those colors. I didn't have much left of the navy blue, so I figured I would use that to start the center. And then I had more than enough of the white. I probably could have done the entire tote just in white, but I wanted to use up some of the colors. And then I had kind of like that turquoisey color, so I finished off each square in the turquoise and then used that as the color to join the squares and to do the finishing around the edging and to do the little strings to tie it closed. So those are my 2 projects for the week. Yeah, I really like the vest. This color is pretty awesome. The fit is great. It takes me about 2.5 days to finish it. So, like I said, if I have time next week, which I probably won't because my little buddy is coming for his annual summer visit, we're gonna spend a few days before he starts back to school. So, in case you're wondering who my little buddy is, my best friend of the last, 15 years or so, has a little boy, and when he was an infant, just a few months old, I offered to be her childcare provider. So for the first 4.5 years of his life, we spent every day together, all day while his mommy was at work, and he calls me Auntie Linda, and he's my little buddy. It was a lot of fun watching him grow up, and he's 11 now, so he's a big boy. And having spent every day with him for a very long time, and then now only seeing him, you know, like an auntie would, I miss him a lot. So when he comes over, it's very special times for me. We typically go outside and play, you know, ride bikes, kick the soccer ball around. When he was little and was with me all the time, we would take at least a weekly trip to the library. So whenever he comes over, even if he's only here for a few hours, we have to make our way over to the library because he feels like it's not a completed visit to Aunt Linda's house if he doesn't go to the library. So we go there and look at some books, and sometimes he'll get on the computer, and yeah, we just have a good time together. So that's gonna be this week. For the beginning half of the week, I'll have my little buddy around. And when that happens, not a lot of crochet or things like that go on, just because I gotta spend time with my dude. So I may or may not have another honor roll vest completed, but we'll see. What I was reading this week, I finished the book God of the Woods by Liz Moore. It was kind of like, I guess you would say like a thriller or murder mystery, missing persons type of story. The premise of the story is that there's a family who owns a summer camp, kind of like in the New England area, I guess, near like New York and all of that section of the country. And the time period of the story is like the 1960s, 1970s, and the family is very wealthy, and at one point their son goes missing, and they never find him. He's presumed dead. They make accusations of various people as to who did their son in, and the police kind of go with the accusations and end up saying that yes, that's the person that did it. And then about 15 years later, their daughter goes missing. Now, the daughter is younger enough than her brother that she never actually met her brother. She just knows the story of like her brother disappeared, was never seen from again. The daughter's middle school age, like 13 years old-ish, and she's very unhappy because her home life is not great, and she's just very angsty, and yeah. So throughout the story now they're trying to figure out what happened with the girl, and it seems strange that like 15 years ago her brother disappeared and was never heard from again, and they don't really know what happened to him and all this and that. Again, the family makes accusations of who they think is responsible for their daughter's disappearance, but there is a detective that isn't satisfied with just going by what the family says, and she does a really good job of investigating and questioning both what she's been told and also questioning various people around the estate and around the camp that help her piece together both mysteries. This book was very much a slow burn. The beginning half of the book was so difficult to get through. I don't know, maybe it was me, I'm not sure, but I powered through. I was like, I have to know what happens. Like, this book is very interesting in the fact of like the children disappearing so many years apart. It took a long time for them to get to a point in the story where things were starting to fall into place and things were starting to make sense. And yeah, I really liked the various characters in the story, especially the detective, because first of all, she being a female, in that time period of the mid-70s and things like that, that was not a very common thing. So that was kind of touched upon in the story. And yeah, I just liked that the lead investigator, or like the person that kind of solved the mystery, was a woman, you know, girl power. It was a very interesting story and a very satisfying conclusion, mostly because it was a woman that figured out what was going on. So if I had not finished the book, it probably would not have been one that I would have recommended, just because of how slow a burn it was. But like I said, picked up, and it was a satisfying ending. So there's that. And then I moved on to Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey. Tessa Bailey is a romance author, and she has a particular style. If you're not into graphic language and things like that, open door scenes, you know, love scenes, this book is not for you. If it weren't for the coarse language, the story is so cute. But in the middle of the book, where the author takes you into that kind of like 50 Shades of Grey area, I can do without it. The rest of the story was great. It's a woman who is like a super fan of some pro golfer dude, and she goes to all of his tournaments and is there with her sign, like waving it around, yelling his name. The main golfer dude's name is Wells, so she calls herself Wells Belle, and she is the winner of a contest where she's supposed to have an opportunity to have lunch with him and take some golf lessons from him, but he has a meltdown on the golf course during the tournament and storms off and reneges on his obligation to her. Basically says to her, I'm a loser, I don't even know why you paid any attention to me, I wish you would just leave me alone. And she is so wholeheartedly dedicated to him that she does not take it well when he drops her like that. She continues to be his #1 fan even after he walks away from the game. Some things happen that cause him to realize that he was a pretty big jerk. And then he goes to try and find her to apologize. And then that's kind of where like everything starts to kind of snowball into their relationship. And yeah, it was a cute story. The fact that like he decides to try to help her out when tragedy strikes her business, and just lots of things. He was just gonna like kind of give her money, and she doesn't want to take it because she says she's not a charity case. So then he offers to hire her on as his caddy, and that's kind of where things kind of kick off. The relationship starts out platonic, as you know, he's employing her so that he can give her money. She loves the idea because she can't wait to be able to like help him analyze the course and give him pointers as to like what he should do, and just she's very good at just the sport of golf, and he's surprised at how good she is. They really hit it off well once he starts to listen to her in terms of like her trying to help him become more self-aware and figure out like why he self-sabotages and things like that. So that aspect of their relationship is fantastic. I really enjoy that. There's a lot of humor in there. She's very no nonsense, like she doesn't take any of his crap. Anything that he says, she can like totally give it back to him. I love that about her. Yeah, it was a fun story. And of course, you know, no book is worth anything if no romance novel is worth anything if it doesn't have a happy ending, in my opinion. So this has a happy ending, and yeah, or at least I consider it a happy ending. It was a fun little story. And then that's the first story in a series of stories. Because I didn't realize that I had read the second book in that series, oh gosh, probably 2 or 3 months ago, The Au Pair Affair. That was about a hockey player that needed someone to look after his middle school age daughter. And the characters in that story appear in this story briefly. So I read that one. I read them out of order. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't really matter. And then to kind of round things out in the series, there's Dream Girl Drama, also by Tessa Bailey. And I figure, well, since I've read the first two, might as well read the third one. So I picked up that one and got the story of Chloe and Sig all fleshed out. And yeah, so Sig is another one of the hockey players on the team. And when Chloe and Sig first meet, it's kind of like a situation where complete strangers meet by chance. When his car breaks down, he stops to try and make the phone call to get AAA or roadside assistance, what do you want to say, to come help him out. And the nearest location to him is a country club where Chloe is. So he tries to get into the country club to use their phone. Why he doesn't have a phone, I'm not sure, but anyways, he tries to use their phone. The concierge at the front door will not allow him to use the phone, but Chloe sees him, realizes that he's in a little bit of a bind, so she pretends to know him and kind of admonishes the concierge for not being more cordial. And she gets him into the country club. They figure things out and have a wonderful evening running all over the golf course and just being crazy kids. And then a few days later, their parents just so happen to be romantically involved, and Chloe's mom, Sig's dad, are inviting them each out. They don't realize that they're being invited to dinner with their parents, who are engaged to be married. So their first encounter with one another is romantic, and then their next encounter is, by the way, you guys are going to be step siblings. They're appalled because how can our parents be together when we want to be together? So yeah, that makes everything very messy. Chloe's mom is very overbearing. Sig's dad is kind of a jerk. And the two young folks don't really know what to make of the whole situation. Chloe is upset with her mom for kind of rushing into things, and they kind of have a falling out where Chloe decides she's gonna go off on her own. Her mom says, fine, then I'm not paying for anything for you anymore. And Chloe's pretty clueless about life. She doesn't really have any idea for even the simplest things like doing her own laundry, how to buy groceries. Like, it's hard to imagine a life where simple basic life skills that you kind of just do naturally are things that somebody has to like actually take the time as a young adult to learn. So yeah, that was just an interesting character flaw of hers. Sig and Chloe's relationship becomes quite interesting. They have to kind of fight the urge to be romantically involved, but Sig gets very personally involved with Chloe's life in trying to help her become a functioning adult. And he feels very protective of her. It's just a very interesting dynamic, and like people from the outside realize like something's going on here. And it's like the public is pretty much figured out like they have romantic feelings for one another, but they're fighting that, so why? And then when it comes to everybody's realization, oh, their parents are involved with one another, but then why is he so deeply involved? He seems more interested in her than just step siblings. Like, it just was a very strange dynamic to the viewing public. They fight it through most of the novel. At one point they realize like this is never gonna work. We have to do everything we can to be like completely away from each other. Ultimately there is a happily ever after. Like I said, no romance novel is worth its weight if you don't get a happily ever after. So there's a happily ever after, there's the epilogue, everything's wonderful. So again, a little bit spicy, open door scenes, coarse language. If that's not your jam, then this is not the book for you. But overall the story is really cute. Definitely a fluff type of book, not nearly as heavy as God of the Woods that I read earlier in the week, but it was a fun read, pretty quick to get through. So yeah, again, my stuff is always all over the place, going from like missing persons story to this fluffy romance stuff, so you never know what you're gonna get, kind of like a box of chocolates, right? What I've been watching this week is more of the same. My daily watch of General Hospital, although my buddy this week checked out on me, my General Hospital friend, Tim, about midweek just decided that he didn't want to stay home today or stay home this week, so he took off for Grandma and Grandpa's, and then just kind of hung out there all week. So I've been flying solo for my GH watch this week. Friday episode ended off like I literally yelled at the TV. So they do a great job of having that cliffhanger in there so that you gotta come back on Monday. So I will definitely be coming back on Monday. And then we've been watching Bachelor in Paradise, which, yeah, guilty pleasure. I love the Bachelor franchise. I can't help it. It's something that I've pretty much been watching since the beginning. I don't watch every season, but when things look interesting, in this year, Bachelor in Paradise looked so interesting. Again, I'm gonna say I love the addition of the Goldens. They bring so much like knowledge and chill to the whole experience. It's really interesting to see how the dynamic between the Goldens and the young folks is evolving. I love seeing like at every rose ceremony how like the guys are all like high-fiving and hugging, and like really you can see like a camaraderie between all of the men with the Goldens. And then this past week when they sent home the Golden Bachelor couple, the woman that had to leave was telling the young ladies that she wants to keep in touch with them. She wants to hear how things pan out for them. So it was just very heartwarming to see these kind of like parent type figures bonding with the young folks and hopefully kind of centering and grounding them a little bit, although the network does their fair share of shaking that tree and really getting folks doing the crazy stuff. So I think I've come to the conclusion that the network is intentionally weeding out the Goldens because they thrive on the drama, which is a shame because the Goldens just have such a way about mentoring the young folks that they should like lean into that, because I think that's as ratings worthy as all of the chaos and drama. That's just my opinion, but yeah. So I will continue to watch because I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. I don't know. It's just fun for me to watch that show. So then on Hulu, we've been watching more of Who's the Boss. Just like a show to kick back, relax. It's kind of like our own version of a bedtime story. And then we found a new program on there called Cub Camp. It's a program produced by National Geographic, and we've only watched one episode, but we love watching nature programs and things like that. So this one, when I first saw it, I was like, let's watch Cub Camp. And he looks and kind of reads the description and agreed, yes, we should watch that. It's a story of an animal rescue in Manitoba where they set up to take care of black bear cubs that have either been abandoned by their mother, or there's been some tragedy where the mother bear just is not there. Bear cubs obviously cannot survive on their own, so this couple takes them in and nurses them and does all the things that a mother bear would do. I don't know anybody that can resist baby animals or babies in general. Whenever I see a baby, I say, oh, I wish I could have one. And Tim looks at me and goes, no, no, we're just not. But when we're watching Cub Camp and I'm like, oh, he's so cute, I wish I could have a baby bear cub. He gives me permission. Yes, Mama, you can have a baby bear cub, but just remember they get big. So obviously I would never try and like raise a bear cub, but in a beautiful world where I wouldn't have to worry about my pet eating me, I would have all kinds of baby everythings. I always say I wish I could be an island girl and have like my own pet dolphin. Dolphins are my absolute favorite animal, so if I could have a pet dolphin, I would be a happy girl. Yeah, so that's what we were watching on Hulu. And then on Netflix, over the weekend, last weekend, I finished watching Ginny and Georga, the latest season. I'm a little bit behind. I know it's been out since like springtime, but finally finished watching Ginny and Georga. And of course, as the season comes to a close, it doesn't get wrapped up nice and neat and tidy with a little bow on top. They, in the last like 2-ish episodes of the season, start kind of setting it up for the next season. So I'm hoping that there will be another season, because if not, they left it at a cliffhanger, and I gotta know what happens to Georga. Like, she got herself out of her latest bind, but now she's all wrapped up in something else. So it'll be interesting to see if they have another season, and what they do with the precarious situation that Georgia's in now. So yeah. And then on Prime Video, we watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Tim says whenever he sees Ferris Bueller's Day Off, whether it be on a broadcast station or when it's currently available on a streaming network, he has to watch it. So one evening during dinner, we sat down, had dinner, and watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's very nostalgic for me. When he watches it, he sees like all of the Chicago landmarks and like different places throughout the city, but from like the 1980s view of them. And he marvels at how so much of the city hasn't changed, but then in some aspects, a lot of the city has changed substantially. So it's a fun movie to watch for all those like landmark places and things that he recognizes throughout the city. It's interesting for me because at his age, I was not nearly as familiar with the city of Chicago as he is. My parents never really took us through, like we went to like the big places like Buckingham Fountain and the lakefront and things like that, but to actually like go up and down city streets, that wasn't really a very common thing for us. So part of our adventures in the city of Chicago stem from having to go to various hospitals with him for his health needs and things like that. So as an adult, I've spent quite a bit of time exploring the city of Chicago out of necessity, basically. Like, I gotta familiarize myself with the streets, so when we go down for an appointment, if there's street closures, we know how to get around. So we've been venturing into the city over the last 20 years quite a bit, and we tried to always make his medical appointments a little less scary by doing some kind of exciting thing after the appointment. So like sometimes we'll go to museums, or we'll go into I don't want to say fancy, but like I guess for lack of a better word, fancy restaurant. We don't have to get dressed up or anything, but just one of the restaurants that's kind of like more of like a culinary adventure, I guess you could say. We go into restaurants and explore different things, and yeah, so we've familiarized ourselves over the last 20 years with fun places to hang out in the city. Okay, so life things. Life be lifin', yo. I'm continuing the reset of the studio. Yesterday I was busting my butt moving furniture, building furniture, just doing a lot of things to kind of come into a new phase of functionality for my space. You might be able to see my plants are a little bit different over my shoulder here, and I have a curtain on the window now. Like, everything's kind of just evolving into the next phase of my creative space. I decided that one of the things that I wanted was shelving that was not as high as the ceiling kind of situation. Any shelving that happens like higher than shoulder height is too high for me to reach the top shelf. So I replaced a cabinet that I had that my dad had thrifted for me. And in doing that, that cabinet then found a new life at my parents' house. So nothing goes to waste with us. But now I have several shelves that I used to replace that cabinet, since the shelves are shorter than the cabinet had a lot more space in it to be able to put stuff. I'm finding that some of the things that were in the cabinet I don't have space for now, so I'll have to figure that out. A little bit of a challenge, but it'll come together. It's definitely still a work in progress, but things are getting to a point that I'm fairly satisfied. So I will, when it's finished, because right now it's chaos, I cleaned up the scenery behind me so that it wouldn't look quite so chaotic. But once everything's finished and things are kind of set into place and I'm happy with it, then I'll do like a full tour of the space so that you can see the hard work that I've put into it. Yesterday, the hard work that I did with assembling the furniture, I did mostly by myself. There was one thing that my husband had to come up and help me with, but other than that, 2 shelving units that I assembled pretty much start to finish with minimal help. So I feel very accomplished with that. Even when it comes to not just finishing the assembly, but also getting them turned into the correct orientation to then get them put into place in their corner of the room. So when the shelves are not full of stuff, they're fairly easy to move. Once I get them full of stuff, I probably won't be moving them around much. But yeah, everything is looking good on the other side of this camera, and it's coming along. And then I will explain my absence in previous weeks. About 2 weeks ago, I was in the emergency room. Nothing life-threatening, but definitely unpleasant. Every once in a while, I get an abscess that flares up on the back of my neck. And about 2 weeks ago, it started flaring, and I could tell because I get like an ache in the back of my neck, and it gets kind of stiff back there. And so I could feel the progression of the abscess forming. And it was at a time when I didn't have time to go to the doctor and have the doctor address it. Also, because it's not the first time that I've had it happen, I know that if I go to the doctor too soon, basically he'll say there's not a lot I can do until the abscess comes basically kind of like to a head. And then what they do is they cut it open and they drain it. So I have to wait until it gets to a point that they can do that. If it's too early in the process, they won't drain it. They'll typically like antibiotics, whatever, like they'll do something in the meantime to hopefully try and get it to a point where they don't have to drain it. But more often than not, I end up having to have it drained. So I wasn't able to get into the doctor when it would have been the right time to do that. I had some things that I had to do that took precedence over that situation. It was stuff that, like, it was in a schedule that I couldn't change the event. So I went to said event, taking Tylenol, ibuprofen, just dealing with the discomfort. And then that was a Friday. So then the weekend comes along and I'm like, okay, well now I can't get into the doctor's office because it's the weekend. And I said to myself, I'll just call on Monday and try and get myself an appointment. Well, Sunday comes along and I was in so much pain and just so like, it was like mind numbing. Like I could not even function. I just wanted to lay in bed and do nothing. So I went to my husband and said, I need to go to the emergency room. I'm not happy that I let it get to a point where I need to go to the ER, but I have to do this. I'm in agony. So he takes me to the emergency room. They drain it. They put me on antibiotics, both oral and topical. And as of today, I'm feeling okay. So hopefully it's knocked out between having it drained and having the antibiotics. It's done and over with. Unfortunately, it's something that I've been told will, like, once you start having problems like that, it recurs. They don't really have an explanation for like why it does it, but that's that. So yeah, there was a week of me just laying in bed doing, well, actually 2 weeks of me laying in bed doing nothing, not wanting to be bothered. I always say that when I get sick like that, where it's something that causes pain, like I can be like what I call normal sick, like when you get like the flu or sinus infection or cold, something like that. I can be normal sick and still, for the most part, function. Like I used to even go to work when I was teaching with like what I call normal sick. You know, stuffy nose, a little bit of a cough, sore throat, things like that. I didn't let that stop me. But when I fall ill where there's pain involved, I become kind of like a wounded animal, where that animal will like go off into like a corner somewhere, or like den themselves up in the brambles or whatever, and be kind of like snappy when other animals come at it, and just like, yeah. I mean, I guess it stands to reason humans are part of the animal kingdom. But both my husband and my son were like, yeah, there's definitely something going on with mom, because she's not very mom-like this week. So like, it's about 2 weeks where I was just not myself. And that's why over the last couple of weeks, my videos have been kind of sparse, but now that I'm feeling better, I think we'll get back on track and hopefully start being more productive and having more than even just this once a week video. So we'll see what happens, but until then, just do all those human things, like, comment, subscribe, share. If you have any thoughts, don't forget, I need to know, should I do tassels or pom-poms on the ties for the bag that I made? I can't decide. I'm having like decision making issues, so any input on that would be much helpful. Yeah, I can't decide. So go ahead and comment that, whether you think it should be tassels or pom-poms. And then let me know what you're reading, what you're watching. If you have any other hobbies that you're working on, let me know what those are too, because it's always fun to share the little details of what we're doing out there in the community, the different fun things. So hopefully everybody is staying healthy, staying safe. Make sure to spread a little kindness in your day, and I will see you in the next one.